Coach, is you Will Kunkel with Queen City News, Charlotte Sports Live, whatever you want to call this. When you're looking at this roster, what jumps out to you?
Yeah, obviously, we just got on the job here just recently, and we haven't done a whole lot of in-depth study yet. We're kind of in that process right now, where we get a chance to kind of look at the roster and make some assessments and things of that nature. But we're far from that right now.
Jim, Mike Kay from the Charlotte Observer. You've obviously interviewed for head coaching jobs and had some interest in offensive coordinator jobs over the last couple of years. Outside of the relationship with Frank, why here? Why this role right now?
Yeah, because it makes sense in a number of different reasons. And when you say outside of the relationship with Frank, I think that's one of the main reasons. A guy who I've worked with, who I know, he knows me, he knows my strengths are, he knows my weaknesses as well, and there are many. So that's a huge reason. But then also the organization, as you well know, I had an opportunity to visit with Mr. Tepper and Scott and the rest of the crew that were doing the interview process, and felt a really good synergy there as well. So that was also part of it, but the location is great because of the fact that, we've been, most people probably don't know it, but even when we were in the National Football League, we kept our home here in North Carolina. So my kids all became fans. My kids are all around these areas, and my grandkids are around the area. So it makes a lot of sense in that regard. And plus, I'm excited about the team and certainly moving forward.
Jim, Joe Person with The Athletic, welcome. How big a role will you have with quarterbacks?
My role, and I think Frank probably described it to you earlier, that I'm just going to be a little bit of everywhere in terms of the offense, working with the defense some, and then also with the special teams unit. And so I get an opportunity to kind of move around place to place, room to room, listen. And if there's questions asked of me, I could give my advice and those kinds of things. But specifics in terms of the quarterback, we had a lot of really quality quarterback folks in that room with those quarterbacks, so I don't think they need my 2 cents.
David Spectrum News 1, welcome back to North Carolina. I was around in Wake Forest days 100 years ago. In that role, in terms of that role, is that an attractive idea for you to be able to kind of bounce and go around and add some spice to the gumbo if needed?
Well, I think so. I'm excited about it, first of all, because of the fact that I can probably use the bit of experience, the framework of experience that I've had. A lot of it has been sitting in that chair in terms of a head football coach, so maybe I can look at things a little bit more globally. Dom probably could do the same thing, Capers. But I'm really excited about that, and I think it's because of my past experiences why Frank thought I would be a good fit in that realm. To give me a chance. I coached on defense, which a lot of people don't realize, and I played defense. So I do have a sense of what happens on that side of the ball, special teams, obviously, and then the offensive realm. So, I have a strong interest in all of them, and perhaps I can add some value here or there.
Frank acknowledged that if you guys have success, you guys will, get jobs elsewhere, and that's important to him as well. Was it important for you just to kind of get back into a building as a coach, and if you want to become a head coach down the road, does it make it easier?
First of all, I think oftentimes in your career you got to do resets once in a while, right? And so right now, the only thing I'm concerned about is the job that I do here. Right here and now. I'm not worried about the future or anything else. I don't plan on being a head coach from this point forward, but my focus is on doing the absolute best job for this organization at this particular point in time, and I don't look any further. Now, some of the younger guys, it's a little bit different, right? But me at my station in life, I want to be as good as I can possibly be in this setting.
Frank Jensen with WBT. I'm just curious to that point, to piggyback off of that. It's been since 2019 since you've been in NFL coaching staff. Had you thought or resigned yourself that your coaching days were done? Did you think they were done? Because it's been 4 years.
No. Matter of fact, I've stayed active. Even though I may not have been on someone's sideline, I did a lot of consulting. Stayed involved in a number of different programs and did just a lot of evaluations for different teams on different players and things of that nature. So I've stayed involved, and I knew at some point in time I'd get to this point where I am now. So I'm happy about it, where it's located. I didn't have to fly elsewhere, away from my kids and grandkids and take on this kind of role.
Jim, NBC here in Charlotte. What's the dynamic been so far with yourself, another former coach, and Dom, Frank, obviously a current head coach. What's the dynamic been when you guys have gotten together, if you have so far, and how will that dynamic benefit this franchise?
Yeah, we haven't done much, to be honest with you, because of the fact, everybody's kind of in and out. I got in last Thursday, and there are guys that are still coming in. There's some guys that are here. But I can sense, right away, first of all, that, Frank and Mr. Tepper, and Scott, in terms of the selection process, they brought in people that have character. They brought in people that communicate extremely well. They brought in individuals that are really, really competent at what they do. They're experts at what they do. And not only that, they're humble. They have great humility, and they're authentic. So anytime you have that sort of cauldron, right, mixed together, and it's pretty dynamic. So it's been fun thus far, even though it's been a very, very short period of time.
Coach, Vash Tyher with Carolina Blitz. Understanding you're still evaluating the roster, as you take a quick glance at it, what do you like about this Carolina team as it stands right now?
Yeah, those quick glances sometimes get you in trouble. You know what I mean? And but we'd like to take a thorough look at everything, and I'm sure Frank will address that issue and talk about the roster in detail at some point in time with you all. But and the great thing about not being the head coach, there's some questions I don't have to answer, right?
Jim, Steve Reed, Associated Press. I'm just curious, you've been around a lot of teams. Is this one of the more experienced coaching staffs when you look around at other guys that are on this staff right now?
I haven't sat down and calculated it. I've been around a while, right? I've been on a number of different staffs, a number of different levels, and so I'd have to sit down and really think about it. But everybody obviously understands the quality of individuals that Frank and Mr. Tepper and Scott have put together. I mean, it's a great group of individuals.
Jim, in a recent interview, you advocated for Thomas Brown as an up-and-coming coach. I was curious, how much did you play into his interview and his candidacy? And then also, as somebody who has been a head coach and mentioned all of those quarterback voices, how important is it to have a guy like him and Deuce and Campen who have that run game support that you can kind of make it a little bit more personal?
You packaged a whole lot into that question, which was good. So a great question. So hopefully I'll hit a part, and if I forgot a part, just kind of remind me, right? So in regard to Thomas Brown, we had an opportunity to have him in what we call a quarterback summit earlier last fall. I had a couple of conversations with him on the phone and knew that he was just a quality candidate. But really, I had very little to do with him here and coming here, and that's Frank and Scott and Mr. Tepper. Those are the guys that make the decisions on that. But I'm certainly glad he's here because I know he's a quality individual with a lot of talent, and he's going to add a lot of value to this organization.
And then having the kind of running game minds that Thomas and Deuce and James have to add with your guys' passing game prowess, how does that help you overall as a group?
It makes for a really good combination, overall, and I think that was designed the way Frank had kind of put this thing together, that he does have diversity of thought, as he would say, amongst those individuals that have strengths in certain areas, but I do think that they're going to be able to put together a really good, strong, running game. That's obviously, something I think is important to Frank and important to the team, and it's something that's going to make a difference just in terms of the guy that's standing behind the center. If you got a running game to go along with what you do, it makes you a little bit more potent.
Jim, Scott Fowler from the Charlotte Observer. Glad to see you again. How would you describe Frank Reich to someone who's never met him before? Because you've had him in a lot of different situations now.
I think you guys have seen who he is. He's very, very bright. He's very, very committed. He has a great sense of not only himself but others around him. He's very self-aware. He knows what his strengths and weaknesses are, and then he can compensate those with individuals around him that he listens to. He's got a great ear, and he's got a great feel for people. He can motivate players. Players will get a really good sense of him. They'll gravitate toward him, and they'll want to play hard for him as well. I enjoyed every time that I worked with Frank in a couple of different capacities, just his ability to learn quickly and adapt, and then be able to certainly support you in terms of what you're doing and even make it better. So he was a lot of fun to work with.
Did you have any background with him prior to Bill bringing him to Indy in 06 or whatever?
I did not. Yeah, no. During that point in time, I had not had an opportunity to work with him, but really enjoyed it when he did come on board.
What were those early impressions like?
About the same. Just as I described it, it was exactly the same as I saw back then. And oftentimes, guys coming in that have a background in terms of being on the field and playing the game, some of them choose not to go into coaching because of the hours, because of the rigorous, requirements that it takes for you and demands that it places on you as a person, and on your family. They tend to go in a little bit different direction, but you can see right away he was committed. And did a tremendous job.
You've seen a lot around the NFL. How does Dave Tepper differentiate as an owner? What have you seen from him in a short period of time?
You know what? I'm stay away from examining and my boss, right? But I can just tell you this: that my initial impression of him, that a very good man, really serious about making certain that he has a great product here, wants to win in the worst way, but he's a great guy to be around. But he's driven and he's very bright, obviously, and so those are the things I could probably relate to you.
Jim, as a former head coach, do you believe that a head coach is only as good as the staff around him? And if that's the case, how is this staff able to elevate Frank?
Yeah, I would say that would be accurate, but you might want to throw the players in there as well. The players are a huge part of it. The coaching staff is certainly important to give direction and also teaching the scheme, just in terms of being able to communicate it properly, being able to tell the players the why of what you're doing, and for them to also believe in it. But it's a player's game. It always has been a player's game. And we do have a coaching staff that I do believe, without question, will gain instant credibility because of the fact of their background. Some of them have played in the league for a long time. Others have coached for an extremely long time. And I believe that their principles are sound. And I think when the principles are sound, it makes for really sound teaching and communication. So, but I do think that, I know we're talking about, the coaches, and we have, I think, really a lot of good coaches, but you also have to put the players in that mix. This has always been a player's game.
How critical is that why piece?
Pardon me?
How critical is the why piece for the players?
Well, back in my day, he asked how critical is the why piece. So back in my day, when I was playing the game, the coaches never told you why. They tell you what to do, and you better do it, right? Well, nowadays it's a little bit different. You got to communicate with these young folks. They want to know why you're doing it. What's the reason behind it? Maybe give you a little history as well in terms of the play or the defense or whatever it might be. And I think that's important. I was always a player too, that even though they told me to do this particular thing and cover this particular quadrant of the field, and I did my job, but oftentimes I would ask myself, I wonder why we're doing it this way, right? Those questions always pop up. So what we try and do, and Frank has always done a great job of it, is try to make certain our guys understand why they're doing what they're doing.
Frank made it clear that he would despise having a bunch of yes men on his staff. How critical is it to not have a bunch of yes men, and in your role and your relationship with him, being able to tell him he's wrong?
Well, yeah, I think that what he's looking for, obviously, are individuals that will speak their mind, will talk about and discuss, exactly what they think about a particular topic, and he wants to be able to weigh that out so he can make his decision. Oftentimes you'll find that the great communicators, they'll be able to tell you and talk about one side of the equation and then argue it against it as well. But sometimes you can't do that yourself, and you have to have other individuals that do it for you, right? So I think that's what the diversity of thought comes from. So he'll listen to you, which is a great thing, but also if he has a sense of the way he wants to do it, he's going to go ahead and do exactly what he wants to do.
Jim, there's been a great deal of attention in the last few years in hiring cycles on improving minority hiring. As you view the enhancements to the Rooney Rule, things of that nature, do you think they're working, and do you think that what do you think more could be done?
Well, number one, when you look at the numbers, they speak for themselves. There's been just volumes and volumes of articles written, reporting on television about the lack of diversity in terms of head coaching position. But there's been a lot of things done in the background to try to improve that. Number one, I think the league and Troy Vincent and Roger Goodell have done just a great job of just trying to scratch and dig and find different ways to enhance that particular position. So they've added the accelerator program, where they give a lot of the top minority candidates in the National Football League to attend the owners meeting. meet with the owners, talk with them, so they're familiar with them. They get a chance to really engage them. But then also, we've run a quarterback summit, which is really devised to try to get more guys that are coaching the quarterbacks. That seemed to be the avenue to reach a head coaching position a couple years back. We started it about 4 years back. When I say we, I actually was added into the group because it was Doug Williams, the legendary Doug Williams, James Shaq Harris, and Jimmy Ray are the guys that started, along with the Black College Football Hall of Fame, Marcus Fitch. And so they added me within the group. And so what we do is we try to go out in college ranks, wherever, and find quality candidates to bring in. It's education and exposure, both. And some of the guys, Thomas has been in that particular. D'Amico Ryans was in it. Robert Sala was in it. I could go on and on. You can see the guys, the names that you recognize. Brian Johnson was in it. And there's many, many more names. But then also, to couple that, we added what we call the Ozzie Newsome GM Forum, because the front office also was having some difficulty, making certain that we were filling some of those positions with minority candidates. But you can see a huge uptick in that area. I mean, there's been, I think, 8 now in the National Football League, somewhere around there. I might be off 1 or 2 there. But we have the GM Forum. Ozzie, obviously, one of the great GMs that our league has ever known, kind of heads it up for us, just in terms of it being named after him. But we brought in a number of different individuals that now are getting themselves in position to be GM. So rather, also, what I really like to see is the fact that the league is not just talking about it, they're doing something about it. So, we try to help with that initiative anytime we can.
Jim,
We've got time for 2 more guys, so let's put Brett and Mike. We'll do 3. Brett, Mike, and Deshaun.
Thanks. Jim, even when you were at Wake Forest, you were considered to be innovative on the offensive side and really changing a lot of things, always thinking out the box. I mean, I remember when you offered a 7th grade Chris Leak a full scholarship at Wake Forest. So in terms of that, how much will you still be doing that now in terms of innovative and hands-on with the offense and the offensive coordinator and Frank?
I'm an observer, but yet I can, if they ask me a question, perhaps I'll have some input. But trust me, there's a lot of innovators in that room. There's some guys with unbelievable backgrounds that that have a great amount of experience, and if they need to ask me a question or two somewhere down the line, fine. But for the most part, I'm going to leave that to those guys. Thomas will do a great job. Frank's obviously going to be calling the plays and uniquely involved, and he's always had really potent offenses. And with Josh and the rest of the crew that's in there, obviously Deuce, and you could go on and on. Sean Jefferson has just an unbelievable amount of experience and a great coach as well. So, I think they have enough collaborators in there. I'll work in there with them, but I'm not going to certainly be, one of those guys that does the bulk of the work, and those guys will get that done for the most part.
Jim, to follow up on Will's question from a little while ago, we brought up not having yes man, but Deuce Staley's kind of known for just putting out his opinion. He's very vocal. Frank called him the Hammer. I was just curious, how important is it to have kind of that enforcer on the staff who is not necessarily the head coach?
Yeah, I do think that's important. And matter of fact, you could probably have 2 or 3. And oftentimes most staffs do have, maybe more than one. And I think in the end, you may find that we have a couple more guys that are similar in that nature. But I do think that the personalities are all different. But the authenticity, I think, is extremely important, and that's the thing that's going to make a difference, just in terms of even your coaching style. If the players can, it doesn't take them very long to determine if you're a phony or not. Doesn't take them long. They've seen enough men stand in front of them throughout their lives that they know, and they know quickly. So the guys that are here, they're authentic. But not only guys like Deuce, who everybody knows Deuce is outspoken and upfront, but there are several other guys that will share exactly what they think and what's on their mind on any subject.
Jim, Deshaun Brown with WSOC, the ABC here in Charlotte. Welcome. I was curious to get your perspective on this. Frank Reich shared a level of hesitation in even calling you to join his staff. What was your response to receiving his call, and why did you say yes?
I was excited about it, to be honest with you, because of the fact that when I didn't get a head coaching job, I immediately had a sort of a change of plan in terms of what I was looking for next. And I knew I was at the stage right about now where I wanted to get back in a building somewhere. And so I did have some opportunities to kind of look at, and I was happy when Frank called because, number one, I know him so well, and that's a big part of going to work for someone. You have to have a level of belief in that person. You have to have a pretty good understanding of what his character's like. You have to understand what his commitment is like as well. You got to get a sense of his personality. All those things were known factors with me and Frank. And then you add in the fact that it's relatively close to where I live. Literally, my family has called North Carolina home since 1993. We've kept a home in North Carolina since that time. My children finished out their high school years in this area. They consider this home. They went to college in this area. They're married folks from down here in this part. I got a daughter in Mint Hill with her 2 boys and husband. I got a son in Clemens, North Carolina with his wife and 2 boys. And so, and my 2 boys in Raleigh. But nevertheless, that all played a part in it, right? And then plus the role in itself. I really, really like this role. I think it was tailor-made just for me. It was ideal because of the fact that I think I can use, all of the gifts that God has given me in this role.
Coach, thank you so much. Thanks,